Oh man. Every episode, I say the same thing, bro. My bump is dope. It's dope.
I love it.
It's dope. It's dope. It's one of the dopest ones out there. Can't nobody tell me nothing different. But enough about me. Good people, great people, God's people. Welcome to another episode of The Antidote. I'm gonna keep the introduction short and brief, because usually I do the whole parlay, but I'm in the middle of my day-to-day. I got clients and stuff like that because I'm an actual professional. I don't just be on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok just popping shit. I actually do have people in my day-to-day life, right? So my running joke is I'm my clients. See, I'm in the mindset, y'all. But my guests are better at introducing themselves as I am introducing them. So who I have here with me is a fantastic woman, a amazing individual, and an amazing advocate for different types of parenting within the Black community. Her name is Miss Yolanda. So Miss Yolanda, please introduce yourself, what you do, where you do it at, how you do it, and all of those other nice things.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Yolanda Williams. I'm the founder of Parenting Decolonized, which is I founded it as a podcast to discuss the intersections of how colonialism and what am I trying to say? How colonialism and enslavement, that's the word, have impacted the Black community. And so I have discussions all the time about like how our parenting is really influenced by enslavement and colonialism. I also am a social justice educator. I'm a single parent to an autistic daughter, and yeah, that's me.
Most definitely, we appreciate the introduction. So the reason why I decided to have you on the show is because Parenting Decolonized is a very it's a very strong phrasing in and of itself, right? I believe that a lot of times in the Black community, when we look at parenting, especially alternative types of parenting to what it is that we've been taught, we do not like to take a microscope to what it is and how it is that, once again, colonization, enslavement, and all of these things go into child rearing, because and it's not just us as Black people, it's us as Black men, us as Black women, we tend to not want to look at ourselves from a space of examination that includes deficits, because that is how we are used to being examined sociologically, right? As a researcher and as an individual who has his master's in community psychology with a focus in Afrocentric theory, I'm quite versed in the scientific ways in which the African American community has been identified, more specifically the African American family has been identified, i.e. the Moynihan Report, things of that nature. If you're not familiar with the Moynihan Report was a report that was published in the 20th century around Black families and how it is that Black families are specifically being ruined or deconstructed through the Black mother, right? How it is that the Black mother is the primary individual who is supposed to raise Black families, who is supposed to support Black families in a particular way so that Black children can have a better outcome in lives. And that report is also utilized by a number of individuals in different socio-cultural spaces to continue to indemnify Black parenting, whether it be the absence of a Black father, whether it be, the harshness of a Black mother. So I want to talk about parenting decolonized, and I want to focus specifically on the decolonizing aspect of it. So when you created this concept, right, or when you facilitated this conversation, what was the inspiration for facilitating this conversation?
Well, I really wanted to, first of all, I'm an older mother. My daughter is 6. I'm 43 years old. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I never intended on having kids. I did not even like children. And so what I did when I found out that I was pregnant is I went ahead and studied like I was defending a thesis. I really wanted to understand how to be a good parent. And so I read all these books and they started talking about brain science and everything else. But what was always missing was discussions about how race impacted parenting. And I wasn't able to find that in like the gentle parenting communities. And so I I started the conversation because I wanted to know, how does something like enslavement impact us now, and impact our parenting, and because it impacts our parenting, how does it impact our community, right? And that got me into looking into decolonization. And I got accused a lot of, using the word decolonizing as a metaphor, but I'm not, because to be colonialized, it's not just land back, right? It's psychological warfare. It is in our minds. We have to kill the colonizer in our heads in order to, and really actually admit that one is there and move forward. And a lot of us don't want to admit that there's a colonizer in our head that is the reason why we have different preferences, why we think certain things are beautiful, why we parent the way we have historically. We have to be willing to admit that we have been heavily indoctrinated and influenced by enslavement and colonialism to even start. So that's where Parenting Decolonized came from.
Most definitely, most definitely. I appreciate that. And actually, I just started reading this book called "Killing the Black Body." I think it's "Race, Reproduction, and Liberation" is the tagline. And in that book, it was talking about how it is that Black mothers specifically were not only looked at as breeders, but they were looked at as individuals who were supposed to keep their children in line so that they would benefit the master, right? So it was genuinely a examination about how it is that plantation tactics were utilized in order to keep children in line so that they would grow up, or they would be developed into entities that were, how can I say this? They were developed into entities that were more beneficial to capitalism than were beneficial to themselves, right? And one of the most common, one of the most common punishment tactics was whipping. Mm-hmm. Right. So when we begin talking about this idea of quote unquote gentle parenting, I think that there is a very intriguing line of thinking as it relates to one of those things where it's like, oh, that's for white folks, and this is then a third, and da 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 da. Right. So even when we say that's for white folks, right, a lot of Black folks will not admit that that is a indicator of colonization. Right. Mm-hmm. It is an indicator of the separation between what luxuries of engagement that white people have versus the luxuries of engagement that Black people have. And it is a retention psychologically of the justification of utilizing these plantation tactics in order to continue to raise your children, right? So I think that identifying that there's a colonizer in the mind, right? Identifying that, enslavement or colonization was not just a land grab, but it was also a psychological implementation that made you believe that you were not deserving of this land that you were on, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about that idea of it being white people shit and gentle parenting, right? So as a Black woman, as a Black mother, what is your idea of gentle parenting? What does that look like?
Well, first of all, I want to make it clear that we're talking not just when it comes to the psychological warfare of colonialism, of enslavement, right? The goal is for us to self-destruct. The goal of, especially right now, like before it was like for us to remain enslaved to be able to work for people, but now that that enslavement has been legally, 13th Amendment, all that stuff, but legally ended. Now the goal is for us to self-destruct. And it's for literally for us to die. And I just want people to understand the impact of what's happening in the world today. And so when we're talking about things like decolonizing, like conscious parenting and gentle parenting, these are revolutionary acts of resistance. That's how I see them, because the whole point is for us to self-destruct, for our children to self-destruct, and then for our communities to self-destruct. And so I personally do not call myself a gentle parent. I call myself a conscious parent, because I think it's more beneficial to the child for me to focus on myself, my trauma, my socioeconomic status and how that's impacting my parenting, my day, like how my triggers, all that stuff, how that is impacting my parenting. I feel like gentle parenting, the goal of that is really to make sure that you are being respectful of your child. I love the foundations of gentle parenting. The foundations of gentle parenting are that you are respectful, to your child, right? It's reciprocal. You're teaching your child how to communicate, emotional intelligence, all things that are really beneficial to raising amazing kids. That said, it's still very individualistic. That's why I don't care for it. It's very much a white led community. Notice I did not, it's the community is white led, but the principles of it are indigenous, right? Because we are not the ones. It wasn't black and brown people who were brutalizing their children before colonialism. That was white folks. So everything that you see that's old school, if you look at the principles of old school parenting and colonialism and fascism, it's the fucking same stuff. Can I cuss? It's the same stuff. And so that's some white people. That's what's white people stuff. Like Stacey Patton said, hitting your child is the whitest thing you can do because that's who we got it from. And right now, white people be beating the hell out of their kids. White men are the biggest family annihilators. Let's stop the narrative that it's black folks who are the most violent when the world is being colonized by white people. I need for us to decolonize our minds around ourselves, because we black folks will talk so badly about her. That's an internalized anti-blackness. That's the colonizer in your head that's telling you that we are the most violent parents. We're not. I promise you we're not. We are just as violent as everybody else. The problem is the socialization. Why we are violent is different than why white people are violent with their kids.
Most definitely. Okay. I like that. It's not the what, it's the why. And I feel like
we got to get to the root of things. If we're unwilling to say what the why is, which gentle parenting does not do, gentle parenting does not want to talk about the fact that the reason why gentle parenting even exists is because of colonialism. Because why isn't it just parenting? We're just talking about respecting children here, right? It's like, come on. Why is it in existence? It's because of colonialism and the white capitalist patriarchy. So if we're unwilling to get to that root, then what are we doing here? What are we doing?
It's very fair, right? Because as somebody who has studied, once again, Afrocentric ideologies and Afrocentric philosophies, children are looked at as completely different. Children are looked at completely differently, right? You have they say that the most sacred connection is the connection not between the parent and the child, but between the grandparent and the child, right? Yeah. Because the child is the one who just came from the spirit realm, and the grandparent is the person who is closest to it, right? Mm-hmm. So within those two entities, you have the ability to translate or to communicate more spiritual aspects of understanding, but also more evolved aspects of understanding. Because the child does not understand, and the grandparent was the parent who raised the parent, right? So there are particular things about softness. There are particular things about understanding. There are particular things about, not necessarily hierarchy, but understanding how things go that a grandparent can teach a child that a parent may not have the patience for, right? A parent may not have learned how to remove themselves from themselves in order to identify with the child how the child is moving. Right. So, for example, just like you said, the idea that me being the best me benefits the child, right? But parents, especially under capitalism, don't always have the space and the time to be the best version of themselves, right? They are very concerned with how it is that their child is going to be evaluated. Why? Because the evaluation of said child sets up the foundation for how the child is going to be engaged with, thus reinforcing how it is that the child perceives authority figures. Right? And how it is that child engages in help-seeking behaviors. So there are a number of things that are in play as it relates to engaging with the parent in such a way that the parent is concerned about, that the grandparent may no longer have to be concerned about, because their child is now a parent, right? So the connection between, once again, the grandparent and the child in African-centered philosophy is a sacred connection that a number of us underneath white supremacist capitalism don't necessarily identify outside of the utility of having a grandparent being able to watch my kid when I'm exhausted, right?
Don't even know it. Right. Don't even, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of grandparents are, I feel like, I'm sure you've seen the conversations around like, oh, Gen X or, Gen X people they're not good grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of what colonialism interrupted, it's always been interruption, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
What he just said was something that's ancestral, but a lot of our ancestral practices have been lost. A lot of recipes have been lost, and we have to get back to that, because that is how we continue to hang on to some of the past, while understanding some of the past is also detrimental and
Mm-hmm.
abusive.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, I tell people all the time, you don't have to throw everything away when it comes to your people, your ancestors. What there is a lot of us grew up with some abusive people in our lives, but that said, is it something that you want to completely throw out? What can those people offer? Some wisdom or knowledge can they offer that you can then take and teach your children? But to your point, you got to be engaged. You can't just be throwing people away. And we've gone to a place where we just throw people away very, very easily these days, under the guise of my mental health matters. And I'm just wondering the impact it's going to have on our future generations.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a really good point, right? The conversation around Gen X is not good grandparents. I believe that a lot of millennials are attaching to the fact that Gen X, their parents were not great parents.
Yes.
Right. And it is once again, is a very individualistic, they did it to me, so they're going to potentially do it to my grandchildren. I mean, they're potentially going to do it to their grandchildren. And that's not always so. Mm-hmm. Right. We are looking at it from the perspective of, once again, this idea of throwing somebody away when they no longer have value to me, instead of identifying how it is to navigate through spaces of complexity. Right. So it has just dawned on me. That I am the same age that my mother was when she had me. Mm-hmm. In 3 years, I will be the same age that my father was when they had me. Right. Do I feel like an individual who is prepared to take care of a child? Absolutely not. Right? Does this prevent me from learning how to come to the point of being able to take care of a child? Absolutely not. Right? So if you are still as a parent able to learn, if you are still as a parent are looking for grace from your children, because there will come a time when the chickens will come home to roost. Right. It's another joke in the millennial community. Like, I'm constantly in a state of anxiousness about fucking up my child. As a clinician, I'm going to tell you you're going to fuck up.
You're going to. If I can just expound upon that real quick, because one of the things that we have to be cognizant of is, again, where the colonizer in our head is coming forth. Perfectionism is a white supremacy culture trait. Thinking that you are going to be the person that ends intergenerational trauma is really narcissistic. You're not going to. I know that my daughter, as best as I can, I'm working to be a more conscious person, a person with a decolonized mind, but it's work, because I didn't grow up this way. So you better believe, between raising her, I can't stand that dog, between raising her and trying to heal and reparent myself, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. I cannot be so egotistical to think that my daughter will not grow up and be like, can we have a conversation about the stuff you did? Like, come on. We are, a lot of us are the first people to do this work. You cannot think you're about to end stuff. What we can think about it, how we can think about it, is we are going to be so much better ancestors. We are going to be really great grandparents, right? We'll be able to, what you just said, as far as like the grandparent being able to give the child more wisdom, we'll be able to be that person and be a great support system for our adult children. I was the first person in my family that did extended breastfeeding. I breastfed till she was 4. No one had did that. Right. I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have anyone that could tell me anything about what it meant to breastfeed a child. I had to go online and search. I now have the knowledge. I can pass that on to my child and help her out, and everybody else in the community. And that's what we need to focus on. What we are doing that is working, how we are winning, and how we can apply that to the next generation.
Most definitely. I want to talk about the community aspect in decolonized parenting. What have you found that looks like, right? So let me rephrase my question. We recognize that individualism is something that is more so in European ideology, right? Whereas collectivism is usually found in Black, brown, and sometimes the Asian spaces, right? So as it relates to collectivism and getting back to that space of collectivism, what have you seen are some of the obstacles, and where have you found some solutions?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many obstacles. As a single parent, it's hard out here. It's really difficult to not have a village, because a village is not just for the parent, it's for the child too, right? Because I don't know everything, so my child should be able to go to other people and learn from them. That's what the village helps to do. The problem is that because of the white capitalist patriarchy, we are now in these individual siloed homes, and we've replaced community with consumerism. We are now buying things and services in order to replace what community did. And a lot of us are overworked and underpaid. So we're exhausted. And the thought of trying to build community is also exhausting. What I have found, what's been working for me, is, especially as someone who is really trying to be the best conscious parent I can be, I had to find my people. And I found a lot of those people online. A lot of people discount online communities. I built an online community for Black people who want to be conscious parents, Black parents who want to be conscious parents. There's 18,000 Black people in that Facebook group, and it's all Black. I don't play with people around that. And I have found some of my best friends in that group, sisters that I've never even met, but we talk all the time on Zoom, right? And when I'm low on funds, they send me money, and vice versa. Like, I have built such a great community virtually. And in person, I have identified the people in my community, friends that have the capacity to help me with my daughter when I need it. I also started looking at her school as an extension of the community, as part of the community. I look at her teachers as village members. We have gotten to this place where everything is so adversarial, parent against teacher, community member against community member. And that's the point. Again, the point of colonialism is that we self-destruct. We're supposed to be here suffering by ourselves. And the cruelty is the point, right? If we make a conscious effort to get to know people, meet them in person, and start to feel safe around them, we can then sometimes get a damn break. Because if we're working all the time and we never get time off, and we're parenting all the time, that's a recipe for a lot of ass whoopings in our home. It really is. Parents be tired, and there's only so much. I read a book called Switch. It is about how to change when change is hard. And what really took from that is how self-control is an exhaustible resource, and how our brain has only so much capacity for self-control throughout the day. It's not just disabled people. When we talk about spoons, it's not just to say all of us have only so much capacity, but then you add on disability, you add on socioeconomic issues, you add on being Black, you add on being a marginalized gender. These are like bags that you're carrying that's weighing you down. And so by the time you are with your child and they do something like spill some milk, you're freaking out on them because you've been weighed down and bogged down by all the other stuff, and you just don't have the capacity to control yourself anymore. And that's not an excuse. That's an explanation for why sometimes parents act the way they do. And what we have to do is identify where I had to identify where I needed help. I also had to figure out, like, what can I delegate? What can I say no to? What can I outsource? And so yesterday I dropped my laundry off at the Fluff and Fold place and paid for them to do it, because I don't have the capacity to add one more care task to my brain. Like, I can't do it. And so I was like, okay, I am going to budget for me to take my laundry and have someone else do it. And I would rather spend that money than spend that time and then have to come home and put stuff up. I'm not doing all that. Sometimes I can afford to have a housekeeper. That's one less care task that I have to do that's going to exhaust my brain, right? And the things that don't cost any money, running my dishwasher, I mean, electricity and all, but you know what I'm saying? Like, saying no to things. If I feel like it's not going to be beneficial for our mental health, I'd be saying no. A lot of us are ripping and running, trying to give our kids all these experiences, and then we're exhausted at the end of the day, snapping at them. And so, like, what can you actually say no to? Sit down, take a nap. When is the last time you allowed yourself just to rest? Because that is part of being a conscious parent. you have to find community intentionally. We have to be active participants in our own liberation. So if you're saying, I don't have a community, nobody helps me, whenever I ask for help somebody says no, then you need to find some other people in the community. That requires you to be intentional and get out and figure that out.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I want to go to the point that you were talking about socioeconomic status, right? So a fun fact that I like to throw out when I have conversations like this is that socioeconomic status is the most defining factor in mental health, right? It is the strongest correlation of mental health outcomes outside of everything else. The second thing is race.
Yeah.
Right? So it's socioeconomic status and it's race, right? The third thing is gender, right? So if you are a poor Black woman, you are almost set up to consistently be stressed out, to consistently be overwhelmed, to consistently be in a state of, survival. And poor Black men are not far behind. When I say not far behind, I mean less than a couple of percentage points, right? Which is the reason why a lot of times when we talk about this whole idea of parenting and what parenting looks like and sharing the load and sharing the labor, this also goes into the dynamics of whether or not families stay together, right? So when we talk about keeping the Black family together, when we talk about rebuilding the Black family and things of that nature, a number of Black men have a very colonialist or patriarchal mindset around it. And it creates unnecessary schisms, right? And when I say that to a lot of Black men, what the rebuttals that I get is, oh, well, you just want us to, like, no, brother. All I'm saying is that statistically speaking, people who are in egalitarian relationships versus traditional relationships, their relationships usually last longer. An egalitarian in this dynamic or in this conversation literally just means sharing the load.
That's all it means.
That's literally what it means, right? But once again, as we were talking about not throwing out everything that the ancestors or the predecessors brought to us, black grannies and Black grandpas and Black aunties and uncles been talking about being equally yoked for eons.
Yeah.
Eons, right? When I first heard the term equally yoked, of course I thought about an egg yolk, because you know what I'm saying? That's what it sounds like, right? But as I got older and as I understood what the word yoke, Y-O-K-E, means, it is a tool that is used to share a burden. That's literally what it is, right? It is that thing that you put across your back in order to carry those buckets up the mountain, right? So if you and your partner are equivalently sharing this load, then it is less load on the both of you all, right? But there are more studies that are showing that people who put their children in front of themselves in their relationships still have that same amount of stress. Why? Because you are not prioritizing the vessel that pours into your children. You are not parenting consciously. You are parenting from a place of attempting to be a perfect parent. And there's no such thing, right? Which leads me into my next point, or leads me to my next question, rather. How have you dealt with mom guilt? Did you experience mom guilt?
I mean, I really just had to, in the beginning, it was a lot of it. Like I said, I had my dog when I was 36 years old. I didn't have a lot of experience with small children, and I was learning about conscious parenting and gentle parenting and all this stuff at the same time. There was a lot of guilt. There's still guilt, but guilt is an emotion, right? So I've learned how to feel it and then let it go. I've learned not to make my guilt into shame, because when we start feeling shame is when we get stuck in a cycle of shame and we end up repeating some of our same mistakes. We start feeling hopeless about our ability to change. And again, getting back to the point of colonialism, right, is self-destruct. The shame is a big part of parenting. And we see it all the time in like different magazine articles and on social media. We see how if you make a mistake as a parent, there's just shame, heat, guilt, all over you. You're supposed to be perfect. And that's just not attainable. And so what I've had to learn how to do is to figure out how I can just start to embody my emotions, feel them and let them go. Because guilt is just an emotion, right? It's the same emotion as happiness. Not the same, you know what I mean? Like it's an emotion. And so if we are able to feel feel the feeling. Like if you did something, you owe your child an apology, you feel guilty about that, feel it, feel the guilt, and then allow yourself to feel it and then let it go. And tell yourself that you are becoming someone you've never been before without a model. We don't have models for this, a lot of us. We don't have anybody to go to even discuss it sometimes because people want to tell us to hit our kids. And so we have to be willing to be imperfect. You have to be willing to embrace the journey. And the journey is like full of all kinds of valleys and pits and sand traps. Like it's a really messy thing to be a conscious parent. Embracing that mess helped me to learn how to let go of the guilt, because we will get guilt, especially as a Black single mother. I am everything that's wrong in the society, right? And there's nothing I can do about how people perceive that. But what I refuse to do is to let other people's perception of what single mothers are or what we do impact me. I'm not gonna let that happen, because I know who I am and I know what I'm trying to do. And so I think if we start looking at how we discuss things like motherhood, which is usually discussed as a martyr. I'm not a martyr. I'm not willing to die for my child. I mean, I will take a bullet for her, but I'm not going to run myself into the ground for her, because I matter. I matter. And so me taking care of myself, me making sure that I have fulfillment in my life outside of her, that's how it helps alleviate rejection. I reject all of those patriarchal standards when it comes to mother. I reject them because they are traps to keep us in despair and to keep us hopeless and to keep us feeling like there's always something more we need to be doing, when right now who I am is enough. And that's the problem, is that we don't believe that. We are trying to still chase white-centered patriarchal standards in our family. That's the problem. So if we stop and we look at the question always is, how am I gatekeeping for and investing in systems of oppression in myself, in my parenting, and in my community? And you will find, once you start interrogating how you hold on to these very destructive ways of being, you will find that the colonizer is alive and waking your mind, just being like, oh, sis, you need to make sure you get married. And now you're putting your child to the side because you're so focused on the man that you're not focused on being a good parent, or the father that abandons their child. You're so focused on your self-fulfillment that you're not here for your child. Like centering the nuclear family. That's a problem, you guys. And I know that people hate to hear it, but it is. It is a problem for us to be so focused on the nuclear family, which is a construct. It is social. It doesn't exist. It is just like it was invented to sell things. I need for y'all to understand that. The nuclear family was an invention. It is new. It is not the way historically people have been. And the fact that we embrace that so hard, get married, your destruction of the family. What destruction of what family? I have a really supportive family and I'm a single mother. I don't feel this. I feel a lot of stress, don't get me wrong. But I feel like I have less stress than the married woman whose husband just comes home and doesn't do shit. Doesn't engage with the kids. She still works because, we can't live without two incomes nowadays. And you still have to work and come home and take care of the kids. And he just looking at you like, where my dinner at? I have less stress than her. But everybody wants to champion nuclear families like that's the epitome of all things. It's not. Community is. And when we get back to community, when we get back to collectivism, all of us will be the better for it.
So I want to take a step and I want to talk about the championing of the nuclear family, right? So it's very interesting because I love this topic, right? I love this topic because a lot of people don't recognize that the nuclear family is antithetical to how it is that Black people historically, not even just on the continent, foundational Black Americans, it is literally antithetical to how it is that we move. So for example, my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, and my sister, multiple generations of the Moors, live within 20 minutes of one another. I think the only person who did not live close to my grandmother was my auntie Beverly, because she lived out in the suburbs. But my auntie Kay, God bless her soul, before she passed away, she literally lived like you could walk from my grandmother's house to my auntie Kay's house, right? My sister, my mother, actually, I think she's equidistant between my grandmother's house and my mother's house, right? My Uncle Albert, at the time when he was more mobile, he's now bedridden, or he has limited mobility, so he lives with my grandmother. But my Uncle Albert, when he was more mobile, he lived less than 30 minutes from my grandmother.
Yeah.
Right. So this is within distance of getting to this person. If this person were to need something, if you were to need something, X, Y, and Z, it was not until my generation where we started spreading out.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of my family of origin, I think that I'm the kid that went the furthest, right? Because it was me and my sister. I live in Philly. The rest of my family live in Chicago. Everybody, right? So I'm the one who lives the furthest, right? But now that I'm talking with my partner and we're talking about family raising, the first thing that pops in my mind is, do we need to be far away from her mother? Right? How does community support look like for my partner? Because for me, I know that like if I really needed to, I could go back to Chicago.
Yeah.
I really could, right? There's nothing preventing me from going back home. Whenever I go to Chicago, I stay at home, right? I stay in what used to be literally me and my sister's childhood room. I stay in that room. You dig what I'm saying? My mother's closet is the room that I used to be in, and my cousin then came. So once again, my blood cousin on my father's side, when I left for college, when he came to the United States, he stayed in my own room, right? So it's very much so this idea of kinship versus the nucleic family, right? And kinship is how you got tribes. Kinship is how you get play cousins. Kinship is how you get god cousins. Kinship, like, bro, you feel me? I was devastated when I found out that my cousin on my daddy's side, my cousin wasn't my real. I was devastated. I was like, "What you mean that's not my real cousin? What you talking about? Like, what? You can't tell me nothing different." You dig what I'm saying? But the reality of the situation is, I went to a birthday party, and some of my aunts and uncles have not seen me in years. But they still coming up to me, oh, Odilakachi, how are you doing? Are you still in Alabama? Are you still in? I'm like, no, y'all about 5 years removed. I'm in Philly now. I'm doing my thing, right? But once again, you can't tell me that these are not my aunts and my uncles. You can't tell me that, right? Because these are kinship ties. These are kinship bonds, right? These folks come to my daddy house. You know what I'm saying? They come to my daddy and my mama house, and they sit, they eat, they do all of these things. These are all family to me. Like literally, these are all family to me, right? But none of these people are blood related to me, but they all come from the same region.
Right.
They all come from the same region, right? So when we say the nucleic family, the nuclear family is a fashion of white supremacy. That is what we mean. And whenever we talk about the nuclear family, I want to be very specific. We are talking about a breadwinner father and a caretaker mother.
Yep.
That dynamic in and of itself in the Black community is why we have so many conversations around, oh, who paying the bill? And 50-50. No. I'm just like,
oh my gosh. I'm just like, if you don't shut the hell up. And to your point, my sister lives 10 doors down from me. We live in the same apartment. My other sister lives about 15 minutes away. My mom, we all live about 10 minutes from her. And that's the thing. Like, we are able to get close to each other quickly. Like my niece, I'll be like, when you come over here, like the last time we were supposed to meet, she was downstairs watching her cousin. And no one is saying don't get married. No one is saying don't get partners. What we're saying is the centering of the nuclear family is destructive to the Black community. And it's not just destructive to the Black community, it's destructive to us individually. Simply because the nuclear family says, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make it happen by any means necessary. And I don't care how you do it. You need to be in competition with everybody to be the best. All the white capitalist patriarchal standards that make it so hard to live comfortably and thrive are wrapped in the nuclear family dynamics.
Yeah. And we make it seem as if though it's healthy, but here's the funny part about it. And I'm gonna knock it down just like this. So in most cartoons that feature a nuclear family, over the last 20 years, right? Your Family Guys, The Simpsons, all the stuff that you grew up on, right? The father is usually what? He works, he does all these things, but he's also a what? A drunk.
Or
He's
really
also what? Negligent. He's also what? Abusive. But we laugh at it and we think it's, well, oh, that's just good old dad. No, absolutely not. I can go into a room and I can ask a bunch of black men right now, raise your hand if your father has ever been abusive or harmful towards you. Raise your hand if your mother has ever been abusive or harmful towards you.
Raise your hand if you have a father.
Right? One of my favorite examples of the connection between socioeconomic status and abuse is the cereal box example. Right? Oh, if I open up more than one cereal box in my house, I'm getting my ass whooped.
Yeah.
You don't think that that's a correlation between the inability to refill this resource?
But I just also want to say that a lot of people will counter and be like, well, the most abusive people in the black family are single mothers. Okay, let's discuss socioeconomic status and race and marginalized gender and how that all intersects in the ability to be a good parent. Again, an explanation is not an excuse, right? So no one is excusing abuse. What we're saying is being a single parent, being the person who stayed, it comes with a price. The abandonment of the person who left, they don't have to deal with all the stuff. And as a single parent, I did a post about this recently because I don't think people understand the labor involved in being a single parent. Literally, you're thinking about something all day. The checklist never ends, right? But this person who abandoned the family, they don't have that. And so I just want people to understand, you're saying the mother is the most abusive. I want to challenge that and say that I think it's more abusive to leave a child, to abandon a child and leave them in a situation where someone is going to be so stressed out that they're taking that stress out on their child. Okay.
Not only that, the parry that usually comes from black men is that, well, what about single fathers? The trajectory of children with single fathers is usually better.
Yeah, they have a village.
No. That's for middle-aged. That's usually the father is usually a middle-aged white man who usually, once again, the word single as it relates to sociocultural analysis in the United States does not mean unpartnered. Single means not married. Right? Within these single father households, there is usually still another partner that is there assisting them with these children, right? So all of these different things coming into the space of conscious parenting, right? To sum it all up and to give a great conclusion. When we talk about conscious parenting, from my understanding, it is just the ability to understand where it is that you are as a parent, what resources you have to your disposal in order to parent, and also recognizing your limits in your parenting. Would that be fair to say?
It is.
Most definitely. Ms. Yolanda, had a fantastic time in this conversation. Tell the people where to find you at, where we can find you.
You can find me on my website at prntgdcolonized.com, as well as on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. On Twitter, I'm very spicy. Okay, so if you ain't ready for it, don't go over there talking to me. I'm spicy everywhere, but really on there, I'm very spicy. So yeah, prntgdcolonized.com, and I also have a yearly conference this year. It's in July, and it's centering autism and conscious parenting. So look out for that as well.
Most definitely. Ms. Yolanda, I greatly appreciate your time. I greatly appreciate the conversation. I greatly appreciate shedding some light on conscious parenting versus gentle parenting. And I appreciate the fact that you kept it so real with us, man. I definitely appreciate that.
I appreciate you having this conversation too. These aren't easy ones, but they're necessary.
Oh yeah, that's the reason why we call it the antidote. You dig what I'm saying? Because medicine is never easy to take, but it's usually necessary for your well-being and for your health. But good people, great people, God's people. Thank y'all for joining me for another episode of The Antidote. And as always, peace, love, soul, Butter rolls. I'll see y'all next time.